Don't drive distracted. Paid for by the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
IT projects piling up again? Managing IT can definitely be frustrating. Whether you have an in-house IT department or you manage it yourself, let Hamilton be your experts. At Hamilton, we take the frustration out of your business tech issues with managed IT solutions. We specialize in co-managed and fully managed IT. Does your business need better managed IT? Hire your local experts. Hire Hamilton at hamiltonisbusiness.com.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. The home of Kansas City Royals baseball. KNTK FM First, 93.7 The Ticket.
Rosie Sports Bar and Grill. Open for lunch and dinner at 10th and P or at 1501 Center Park Road.
You've driven by GE Landscape Supply countless times, likely without even knowing, at 6701 Cornhusker Highway. Now it's time to stop in. GE Landscape Supply sells to homeowners and contractors with a vast selection of landscaping and construction materials. They sell in bulk to save you money, and you can buy anything from a 5-gallon bucket to a semi-load. And don't forget, they deliver anywhere. Stop by 6701 Cornhusker Highway from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Go to GELandscapeSupply.com for more info or call 402-467-1627.
Hey, it's Jake Bachman. Join me, the captain, Rashawn Jackson, and the black shirt, Terrell Farley, on Monday, August 21st at Club Pilates for their grand opening and ribbon cutting. We'll be there from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the captain and the ticket water cooler. That's all this Monday at Club Pilates at 83rd and Holdridge.
Join Planet Fitness now and get the PF Black Card for only $24.99 a month. You'll enjoy an upgraded experience with tons of perks.
Like access to more than 2,000 locations worldwide?
Yep.
And massage chairs?
Yes.
Can I bring a friend every time?
Sure.
Can my friend be a horse?
Nay. Sorry. Get the PF Black Card and feel Fitzacular. Only $24.99 a month. Our most popular membership, the PF Black Card, is your ticket to getting all the perks. Join today. See Club for details.
Tune in to the Teammates Mentoring Hour each Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on 93.7 The Ticket. Hear stories from the program started by Tom and Nancy Osborne and how it's changed mentors and mentees' lives and how you can be involved. The Teammates Mentoring Hour, Wednesday nights from 6 to 7 o'clock on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Live from the heart of Lincoln, America, welcome to Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back into Ticket Weeknights. I am Harrison Arens, going to be running solo all the way up until 9 o'clock. You guys can join me on the show at 402-464-5685, as well as I'm streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Allo Channel 951. We're going to be talking some basketball, some NBA, as well as some Husker football. We're going to get the NBA house cleaning out of the way first, because I'm honestly at a point where I can't believe this guy just manages to steal the storyline every single Thursday. But James Harden has some pretty serious quotes, obviously has requested to be traded out of Philadelphia, and is kind of doing the James Harden thing. He's not getting what he wants, and he's trying to do everything in his power to really force his way out of there. He made a comment to a group at one of his camps he was teaching. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be part of that organization that he's part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be part of an organization that he's part of. And, you know, that one was kind of out of left field. I didn't realize the relationship between Daryl Morey and James Harden had soured that bad. You know, for a while, it felt like that was the only guy James Harden was willing to go play for. When he left Houston, you thought a big reason was that is I can go down to Philadelphia and kind of get that same treatment I was getting over in Houston. You know, let me do my own thing, play iso ball, show up to camp when I want, out of shape, whatever. I think he was really looking forward to kind of having that experience again. And I really couldn't tell you where the relationship went south, but it's pretty bad right now. Knowing James Harden, if you try to keep him, he is going to show up into the season out of shape. He's not going to try. It's going to be the Houston Rockets situation all over again. You remember the Houston Rockets with Kevin McHale, you know, and he got fired in that 2016 season, 2015-2016 season, 11 games into the season, after he just took that team to the playoffs. And 11 games in, James Harden shows up out of shape, doesn't want to play, It makes like Kevin McHale doesn't have good control of the team. He gets fired in 11 games. It's just so hard for some of these coaches to kind of work around that, right? Because you're Kevin McHale, when you're coaching, how do you go about handling a player like James Harden? If he doesn't want to play and he's showing up out of shape, but your biggest contract is James Harden, does that fall on the head coach to get him lined up, willing to play under him? And it's something these owners that they get these players all the time, and then they're willing to fire the coach just early into the season as soon as it's not working. And I feel like a lot of this just has to be the organization, understanding what you're signing up for. You see it all the time with Kyrie Irving. You see it all the time with Ben Simmons. You see it all the time with James Harden. When those guys go to new teams, the head coach typically goes as well. There's always a new head coach. It's just not a good system. And I think the organization's got to be held a little more accountable as to when they're kind of taking these guys in, and then you're going to fire the head coach, kind of blaming it on them. You look at the Houston Rockets situation, that James Harden thing, it's just kind of a big disaster now, right? You had some real talent there. You put James Harden with Russell Westbrook. You put James Harden with Chris Paul, and you couldn't get it working. And now you go over to Philadelphia. You have James Harden and Joel Embiid. You're still not winning. You can't get to the Eastern Conference Finals. At some point, you have to stop paying James Harden or Joel Embiid if you're the 76ers. Like, you have to make a move. If you want to continue to hold on to James Harden and Joel Embiid, you're going to keep getting the same result. It's the definition of insanity. That team's not going to make the finals unless they get rid of one of those guys. The process is going to stay the process forever at this rate. I don't ever see an end product coming from Joel Embiid. He kind of got the sympathy MVP award because we don't like voting for the same guy too many times in a row. But Joel Embiid, great player, MVP caliber, sure. Even though I don't think he got it last year, definitely should have been Jokic. Nonetheless, it's the Philadelphia 76ers. They're going to have to blow things up sooner than later. I just don't see this thing working. I think you do move Joel Embiid, possibly James Harden as well. Maybe you bundle those guys together and you really start investing in your future. Because if you try to start the season out, James Harden's not going to show up. If he doesn't want to be there, he's proven it before. He's not going to show up, period. So you don't even have to wonder about that one. Try to think, well, maybe we can swing him our way. His comments about Daryl Morey were pretty strict, and he wouldn't be saying that so outlandishly if he meant keeping his word. And as far as if I'm the 76ers, I'm blowing the whole thing up. It was a disaster. We should have never brought James Harden in. It's kind of my whole beef with Kyrie Irving. Same thing. These players are so good that these organizations are willing to kind of just trust them with large amounts of money and hope that they're going to be happy and content enough that they're going to want to stick around and try to make it work. We're kind of in an era where these superstars, they don't want to always make it work. The NBA is so competitive now that if you're Damian Lillard, is it even wrong for you to want to leave town? Because Damian Lillard, if you're considering the right thing to do is stay with your organization, Damian Lillard got nothing for it. He's Portland Trailblazers. He'll be one of their, arguably probably the greatest, if not one of the greatest. You can argue some names in there, but one of the greatest Portland Trailblazers. Other than that, he really didn't get anything from it other than the max contract deals. But in terms of winning, he never won a finals. The best he ever did was to Western Conference Finals where they got swept by the Golden State Warriors. And that was his greatest series. The most important series of his NBA career was the sweep to the Golden State Warriors. So maybe it's not even wrong for some of these players to jump ship. It is something the NBA has to get a hold of, though. Because I can tell you right now, watching the James Harden fiasco over and over again, it's just not fun to watch. I don't want to see an out-of-shape, sluggish James Harden coming into the season. He was one of my favorite players to watch, especially when he was over on the Houston Rockets. He was just a real, just an electric player. You kind of shocked the NBA world the same way that Ja Morant did. Just this flashiness that we hadn't really seen before and the confidence to go along with it. But ever since then, like watching James Harden has just not been the same experience. You remember the playoffs, this last playoffs, James Harden has an awesome game one. I think he drops 30-some points, and the 76ers win that game. And you're like, okay, here we go. Joel Embiid's out, but Harden stepped up for that game. And when Embiid comes back, we're going to be rolling. We got the playoff James Harden back, and the series goes on, and James Harden disappears. James Harden's playoff record, if you're going to sign that guy hoping for an NBA final, you need to start looking at his playoff performances. Because at what point do you look at the playoffs performances and say, hey, that's the important part of the season, and that also happens to be the part where James Harden falls apart notoriously. But let's sign this guy thinking, we're going to go win the NBA finals. Again, it's just kind of bizarre thinking excuse me, as I fight through allergies a little bit here. It's just kind of bizarre thinking when you're looking at the NBA and you're trying to follow this James Harden situation that has just been absolutely crazy to follow, and the story changes every day. And I'm at a point where I don't think we're ever going to see the best version of James Harden. He's going to have to go to such a special organization that caters everything around him. I'm just kind of, I would love to know where it went so south, Daryl Morey. Maybe I'm wrong and I'm being too hard on James Harden. And maybe Daryl Morey made some lies. He told him things that didn't end up being true. But I look at his track record and, I'd be kind of an idiot, I would think, to say James Harden has such a good track record. I'm going to take his word. At some point things just don't line up. And with James Harden, that's just where I'm at. I think he's just forcing his way out. He's going to show up into the season out of shape. He's not going to be ready to go. And that's just what you're going to get. So if you're the 76ers, you really do got to blow it up now. But that's kind of it for the NBA. Like I said, there isn't a ton going on. There are some schedule releases coming out. Chicago Bulls dropped one today. That was pretty fun. But nonetheless, as we're kind of trickling into the NBA season, we're just kind of at a point where it looks like it's going to be the Denver Nuggets are still going to be the heavy favorites. We're curious to see, what does Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker all look like on that same roster? When you look about the Phoenix Suns, I'm still going to stick to my word that playmaking is important. And I don't think you can just say we score a lot of points. We can overlook the playmaking and we can overlook the defense. That argument drives me insane. We have 3 elite scorers. Try to stop us. Who are you going to stop? If you got such a studded offensive roster, you're still going to have to play on the other end of the floor. And if you don't have any real strong defense, go look at the Portland Trailblazers and them never matching Damian Lillard up with a guard that could actually play defense. They said, here's CJ McCollum, here's Anthony Simons, 2 guys that, just like you, Dame, really struggle against elite offensive guards. And that is a huge reason why the Portland Trailblazers never won anything. The offense was fine. If you have Damian Lillard running your offense, Jokic wasn't as great as he was supposed to be, but it's still plenty of productive and a lot of great role players go along with it. The offense was never the problem. It was always the defense, and they can never figure out a way to help Damian Lillard. Just get him another guard that when you are playing, say, an elite point guard, you got Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies up. Now we don't have to put Damian Lillard on Ja Morant. It's just not, that's a matchup nightmare because, they weren't even doing that. They put Anthony Simons, which that's not any better. It just always drove me insane. So that's why I look at this Phoenix Suns roster. Yeah, they're going to be better than the Portland Trailblazers were. That's just a fact. You have 2 of the best scorers, possibly the best scorers in today's generation with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Bradley Beal, he's not there, but he's still one of the best scorers in the NBA today. So they're going to be in the playoffs. But I'm just saying that defense, once you start getting to that playoff defense, I don't know who these guys are going to be able to stop. You already are sitting with a weak rim protector in DeAndre. I should say weak, an average. We'll call him an average rim protector. He's not bad, but he's not going to wow you either. Offensively, another thing I don't think people are realizing is look at what Chris Paul did to DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton got a large share of his production off of pick and rolls with Chris Paul. So now you're eliminating that as well. You're hoping that Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant can kind of still work that same pick and roll magic. That, or you're just leaving DeAndre Ayton out of less pick and rolls. And then you're really never going to get the full ceiling of DeAndre Ayton. Because I think that's one thing Chris Paul deserves a lot of credit for, is really unlocking Ayton's game. He got significantly better as soon as he was playing with Chris Paul. And I'm betting there's going to be a drop-off this year. He doesn't have that elite point guard like he did in Chris Paul that Yeah, he's not the best scorer. He's not the best defender, but he knows the game so well, and his playmaking and IQ is off the charts. And I think that just gets swept under the rug anytime you talk about Chris Paul. And I think the Suns are going to be kind of looking for that. You know, you have a lot of elite scorers, but you still didn't really fix yourself on the bench. Depth is a problem. The center depth is a problem, let alone your starting center. If you're going to be able to elevate his play with the new changes you've made, to me, it's just a lot of pieces to put together. And again, with the Phoenix Suns, I just think they undervalued defense and they undervalued playmaking a little bit. I think they just went for a full Zach. They really just dove in on, we are going to outscore everyone, and that's how we're going to win the finals. And that's what they're going with. I'm curious to see how it works. Obviously, it's not like they're not going to play defense, but that skill level of defense, I think that's what I'm most concerned for. But moving on here, again, like I said, not a ton to talk about in the NBA world. Still no news on Lonzo Ball, really. He's out for the season. But other than that, doesn't look like for the Chicago Bulls point guard, they're just not catching any luck. You go from Derrick Rose to Lonzo Ball, injuries, possibly career ending for Lonzo Ball. You just hope he gets back on the court. But nonetheless, we'll put a bow on the NBA talk. Kind of want to switch over to Husker football because we're getting to that point of the year where it's crazy. August 31st, we will be playing at Minnesota. And the great thing about that, from a fan perspective, if I was a coach, I would not want to draw Minnesota week one. Minnesota's the team that Gary DiNardo, Big Ten analyst, he called it out. He said Minnesota looks like a team that's been under a head coach for 7 years. Looking at the depth, looking at the size, looking at the execution. It just looked, the way I read those comments was, it looks like a roster that when the season rolls out, they're ready to go. That's a program that's been developed, that's been fine-tuned, and that's where they're at right now. They continue to fine-tune things, but the product, the foundation, the framing, it's all set and ready to roll. So PJ Fleck, he's got the culture, he's got the framing done, the foundation's set. He's really just fine-tuning. And that's what I'm saying as a fan, it's great for us to see where we are. It really is the ultimate litmus test. You want to see, the biggest challenge for Nebraska football, right? You ask anyone, what has been the biggest challenge for Nebraska football in the past 10 years? A majority of people are going to say, in the trenches, we have been just getting killed. Offensively, we're struggling blocking. Defensively, we're struggling to rush, stop the run. We just can't get pressure on throws. It's always been the trenches, right? Well, Minnesota, that's kind of their bread and butter, is winning in the trenches. Not a high electric offense, not anything flashy. They're just going to run the ball 5 yards in a cloud of dust, 3 yards cloud of dust. Can Nebraska's, offensive line and defensive line hold up with Minnesota? Because again, it's not incredibly deep right now for Nebraska in those departments. But with that being said, I actually do got to go to break early. I got someone at the door, got to go handle that. But nonetheless, still got a full hour going all the way up until 9 o'clock. I'll be catching you guys in about 5 minutes or so on the other side of the break.
Don't let biased algorithms or degree screens or exclusive professional networks or stereotypes, don't let anything keep you from discovering the half of the workforce who are stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time to tear the paper ceiling and see the stars beyond it. Find out how you can make stars part of your talent strategy at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza, the big one, all the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
This is how we do every day. We grind, and if you wanna come and text us,
If you love them enough to turn on your music and pretend like their music is your music,
This is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Diagnosis was hard to take, but it gave my mom and me more time to plan together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
Nick is here. What'd you call him earlier?
Yeah, you got a name. He said a name.
Can you hear Nick?
I said you look like a big swimming pool. You look like a big swimming pool over there. I called you Big Swim.
Big Swim.
All right. Should I tell the people what you called me the second week that I ever coached you?
Don't hang that over my head.
Track record here.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning. Back to the Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back into Ticket Weeknights. Again, I am Harrison Arens going solo all the way up until 9 o'clock. You guys can join me through the Starter Heyman text line at 402-464-5685, as well as I'm streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Allo Channel 951. So going back to Husker football, and again, you guys can join the show. As you comment in, I'll read them off. Any kind of thoughts about Husker football? That's kind of what the sole I was here about. You know, any kind of conversations, engagements you guys want to have, questions, we can figure those out here on Ticket Weeknights with Harrison Arens. But nonetheless, kind of going through here, you know, as I was saying, with Nebraska football, you think about the last challenges for the past, you know, if you're talking to really since the fall of Nebraska football, you know, a lot of people would be saying the trenches were always the part where we really felt like we fell off. You know, we were no longer able to dominate the line of scrimmage. So you know, at one point in time, having this revolutionary strength and conditioning program that really put our guys at a new edge, that we're just stronger, faster, better shape. We could play hard, not just for the first, second quarter, but we could get after halftime, play hard in the third, and then really finish in the fourth quarter and keep hitting like it was the first quarter. And once everyone kind of caught up to that, and also we start seeing, some questionable coaching hires, the development, particularly in the offensive line, defensive line room, isn't great. There's a lot of turnover, especially if you're talking for the offensive line, the amount of offensive line head coaches. It's another reason that the development, sometimes I'm so hard to consistently bash, in particular on our offensive line. Everyone gets, they get a lot of heat. When games go bad, the offensive line typically gets a lot of heat. And the biggest thing for me was, think about the amount of coaching turnover the offensive line room had. It was constant. So you're expecting these guys to develop under new voices year in, year out. Those new voices are going to have different ideas on how they should develop. And then they don't show out come the season, and we're all surprised, throwing our hands up, saying we can't believe that our offensive or defensive line isn't improving. You have to start developing players. Strength and conditioning is at a point where you can be elite at it, but to have a serious edge over anyone else, maybe it can be done. But I just think technologically, once you get to the elite and you have the money, I feel like everyone's kind of on the same plane there, right? There's not this revolutionary discovery like Nebraska had, or just a vision to really pump a lot of resources and effort into the strength and conditioning, knowing it's going to pay off. At this point, every program knows it's important, so you're not necessarily going to get an edge on them that way. Now, you can get a small edge, but to the edge of what we had under Tom Osborne, we're never going to get an edge like that again, unless we come up with something revolutionary again. But like I said, that's not necessarily going to be in the conditioning strength training room. That's going to be kind of collective as we go on in the future. I just think right now, with how strength and conditioning goes, it's very widespread. Hard to kind of keep secrets at that point. I think there's so many ways to kind of develop these athletes now that you're going to have conflicting opinions about what's the best way. So again, I don't think the edge is there, but to get that back, you really have to start working on that development. Get those in-state recruits and really fight off the portal. If there's one room that you would love to keep kids from hitting the portal, for me, it's got to be that offensive line room. You want those guys together. You want that chemistry to be there. And you just want that full development process. Because the Big Ten, as we all know, if you want to throw a lineman out in the Big Ten, probably not a true freshman. That'd be kind of crazy to do at the Big Ten level. They'd have to be something incredibly talented and skilled and already developed beyond years to be able to play starting level Big Ten offensive or defensive line. And again, that's why I'm so excited from a fan perspective. I'll say it again, from a fan perspective. If I was Matt Rule, Minnesota is not the team I'd want to play week one. I'd kind of like to see what we have and what we can work on before we go up against Minnesota. Because as I said, when you're going up against Minnesota, there's going to be no question that your offensive line and your defensive line is going to be tested. What does that 3-3-5 look like when you play Minnesota? Because you have to have it figured out by then. When Minnesota comes around, it's not going to be the most complicated offense. It's not going to be flashy, but it's going to be physical, and it's going to be, like I said, 3 yards cloud dust over and over and over again. And then they might catch you falling asleep on a play action, as we saw Tanner Morgan do, the mini PJ Fleck Tanner Morgan do so many times to us. That was always kind of unique. I will say Tanner Morgan typically played pretty damn well against Nebraska. But again, you got to stop that, right? You get comfortable when your offensive line is dominating the way they are. When you're getting 4 yards every single time, yeah, those passing lanes are going to open up. Those corners and those safeties, they're going to start sneaking up a lot, realizing that the defensive line is just having a really hard time holding these guys up. And then those lanes open up. And again, that's probably why Tanner Morgan always seemed to do as well as he did against Nebraska, is because the run game just killed us. If you can't stop the run game, those play actions are going to be incredibly effective. And I think that's where Tanner Morgan did so much of his damage, just really working on that. But then moving on, then you have Colorado. This one's a little more interesting because obviously you're going to have 2 first-year head coaches going in there, and Deion Sanders, Matt Rule. The interesting thing about this is, I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong, but definitely polar opposite approaches, right? Deion comes to Colorado saying, if you're not ready, I'm going to get guys that are ready. You guys were bad last year. If you really want a spot on this team, I'm going to have this kind of hard-nosed attitude about, we were bad last year. If you really think you deserve to play for Colorado, you got to prove it every single day. Then you show up to Matt Rule, and his approach was, I came here to coach you guys. I didn't come here thinking you guys weren't enough. I came here to coach you guys because I like what I saw, and I like what the future can bring. So that right there, luckily, again, that's going to be kind of a feeling out experience for both teams. No one's really going to have the edge on each other. The only thing going for Nebraska was that Colorado roster last year was just really miserable. And for them to make a big leap, it had to be pretty insurmountable. I don't think they'd have enough to necessarily challenge Nebraska right away in year one. But we'll have to see. I mean, you can't deny Deion Sanders. He can coach. Whatever your thoughts and feelings are about the way he coaches, that's your opinion. But the dude can coach, and he's had some great programs underneath him. Nonetheless, 402-464-5685 for you guys that want to join in the show. And, just kind of going through this Nebraska football season, I do wonder how long it takes for, Nebraska to really start clicking. Because if we go up to Minnesota and we can tell pretty early on that the defensive line or offensive line just isn't quite there yet, that's a short window to kind of figure things out. And then still continue to build that development. There's enough guys in there. Ty Robinson's one I really look for to hopefully step up this year. Chief Borders is a guy that, I just never really, just really hasn't been out there much, in terms of his name. It seems like you hear some good things about him, but I'm really just kind of curious to see, with his ranking coming into Nebraska, can he make a jump and be a significant player for Nebraska? Reimer is a guy that I'm probably least worried about. He's a guy to me that, especially you put him in a 3-3-5, Luke Reimer's best ability to me is he could fly on the field. He had a lot of plays where he is chasing down on some pretty long pursuit angles. And you put him in a 3-3-5, he can be a little more mobile. I think that's going to serve him well. But again, you're looking for more leaders on that defensive side of the ball. And Luke Reimer, you have a guy in there. Gifford, going to free safety. I think that kind of surprised a lot of people. Obviously, with the Miles Farmer news, maybe it makes a little more sense. You wonder, was Gifford playing so well before, and that kind of led to Farmers leaving Nebraska, that Gifford was already kind of taking his reps. And that 3-3-5 really, the way I'm kind of reading it is that must really fit Gifford's game well. Allow him to just be a threat in space out there at the free safety position. So again, I think when you're looking at this Nebraska defense, I think that's going to come together a lot faster, right? Because you have some leaders on there. Yeah, there's some guys that you're wondering if they can turn that page and really start providing solid production. Last year, I think we all kind of got pretty hyped on what we could see from our defensive ends. And to put it short, there wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of pressures on the quarterback. Wasn't a lot of sacks. Wasn't a lot of tackles for loss. We just weren't getting the pressure that we wanted. But our defense could still hold on enough to keep our offense in the game. So defense, if you're, thinking about it too, defense typically clicks a lot faster. So if you're under rule one of a new coach, the defense is usually going to be the thing that comes around first. It's, yes, there's lingo, there's formations, and every coach has to do it their own way, but it's not nearly as much to kind of take in on that defensive end. It's a lot to take in on real time when you're actually playing, but as far as the X's and O's go, you can get that in tune a lot faster than you can with the offense. The offense just has so many more moving parts, and you heard that from Matt Rule. With these scrimmages, some of these earlier ones in particular, that first one, the small things, just the procedural issues that were going on. It's kickoff and you have a late substitution. There's small things that have really bit Nebraska in the past. Those small flags that you're 3rd and 5, you're on a game-winning drive. All you have to do is make a short pass or just find a way to get 5 yards. and offensive lineman jumps. Okay, great. Now you're looking at 3rd and 10, and it just makes the game so much harder. And that's been a problem for Nebraska consistently, is those procedural issues, just cleaning up the small stuff, substitutions, holding, special teams. That as a whole has been a nightmare for Nebraska. And, that's one right now. We have some good kickers in there. Fultz, Bleak Road. You feel pretty good about that. It was kind of a sigh of relief the spring game, watching the first one go through, like, okay, as it sits right now, this shouldn't be a worry. It may come up later, but as of now, we're able to kind of clean things up on special teams, at least with the field goal kicking unit. Now, with the return, that has always been a bewilderment for me, because it's not like these coaches don't know how to coach special teams. With some of those guys, I'll bring up Cam Taylor-Britt, because he definitely redeemed himself, and everything he did on defense kind of forgave his fumbled punt return against Illinois. And there's multiple times where they really want to put him back there because he is and can be a playmaker. But you got to just be able to lock in. And if you can't do that one thing, they're not going to give you a lot of shots. They're not going to be out there. But again, that's just for Nebraska to clean up those small things. How many times has special teams lost us games? How many times has the procedural issues that Matt Rule is talking about with those late substitutions, too many guys on the field, just the really small things that can take you out of a game for no reason other than just getting in your own way. Those are the things that, if Nebraska's ever going to kind of get back to being on top, you got to be clean. You look at Georgia and you look at Alabama. Yes, they have talent galore, but you also look, and they typically lead, or at least in the top 5, top 10 every year in terms of getting, minimum amount of yards called against them. They don't have a ton of penalties. They're they're skilled and talented, but they're well coached. And that foundation is there. And knowing if I mess up, there is someone behind me that will not mess up. Especially if you're talking about Alabama for special teams. If you drop one punt return, they can look behind him, and they got a lot of guys that can run. It's not a question for them. Over at Nebraska, you might not have that talent behind you. So those procedural things become that much bigger because there is no quick fix. We're obviously not as talented as Georgia or Alabama. There isn't as many guys that we can just plug in there and play. So again, you got to fix that small stuff. Offensive line has to develop this year, and you do feel pretty good about it. You at least have some returning guys. Nuri's going to be back there this year. Last year, not having him, I think it did hurt a lot. That offensive leadership is something that, I can even tell you at the high school level, it is so great having a guy next to you that can always tell you what's going down, that he hears the play, and every single time he can tell not only where he's supposed to go, he can tell you where the center is supposed to go or whatever position he's playing. The guy I'm talking about, for instance, played tackle, but he could tell me where I was going. If I had a drag route, or whatever route I had, or if I was just in pass pro, he could tell the right tackle what he was doing, the center, so on. He could tell every single lineman what their role was. And a lot of the linemen, you get towards the end of the year, everyone's kind of aware of where they're going. And when you can build that connective tissue and you start to understand, everyone's strengths and weaknesses, getting to the next level becomes really easy. You can start trusting the guy next to you to make his block. And not only that, you're aware of his skill and his development, and you understand where he's going to go next. You can start to work to that next level because you're such a connective tissue and the whole line moves in sync. That's one thing that, you look at Iowa, you look at Wisconsin, you look at Minnesota, those offensive lines move in sync. There's a play blowing up all over media for a while with Wisconsin. Their entire offensive line pulled and no one got in each other's way, and it was a touchdown. It was an easy touchdown at that. It's stuff like that. When you have that offensive line that's been fine-tuned and developed, and they trust each other, and you haven't been turning them over with a new head coach every other year, or I shouldn't even say every other year, every year as it's been for Nebraska, when you give those guys the ability to develop and kind of form that locker room, and then, I like Raiola. I want to see development. But again, preseason Kool-Aid, everything seems like it's going great. Those guys they really trust Raiola. you just want to see that development. And I really do think with Matt Rule, that's a big point for him. And he seems to have a lot of faith in Raiola. So again, if he's got a lot of faith in Raiola, Matt Rule with his kind of coaching pedigree, his word's going to mean something to that. So again, we're talking Husker football here on Ticket Weeknights. I'm Harrison Arens. We'll throw it to break here, but you guys can always catch me on the other side, 402-464-5685. We'll throw it to break, and I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Hey, moms and dads, bring the whole crew to a Salt Dogs baseball game and unleash the fun. Visit Haymarket Park all summer for fireworks Fridays, souvenir Saturdays, Sunday family fun days, and more. With 50 home games, even weekdays can be unforgettable. Planning an event? Make it a home run with group discounts. When you need an outing the whole family will enjoy, unleash the fun with the Salt Dogs. Call 402-474-2255 or visit saltdogs.com for tickets.
If you're a veteran or know a veteran who's having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, the Veterans Crisis Line provides direct connection to free, confidential, and compassionate support. Dial 988, then press 1, and you'll be connected to a trained crisis counselor who will listen, provide support, and connect you to additional resources if needed. Thank you for your service. We owe you our support. Dial 988, then press 1. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Old School with DP and J.
They have the run and gun offense coming in, a new head coach that's been given the longest runway of any coach in Wisconsin, new coach in Wisconsin history, to change the program to Cincinnati way, and a new defensive philosophy. They're ripe for the pick.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
The captain, Vershawn Jackson.
Gilbert could be at every down tight end. He looks the part. I mean, I had a chance to talk to him. He has, to me, transformed himself again in the offseason. I want to see him blocking and play action stuff.
Well, maybe if you do put him in the slot, you throw a quick hitch to him and, let the big guy rumble.
But I think Fedoni is just as dangerous. I think you put those two guys together, that's a dangerous tight end room. I like them together more than I like them apart.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action. Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is how we do every day. We grind, and if you want to come and text us.
If you love them enough to turn on your music and pretend like their music is your music,
This is Mommy's Jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
Nick is here. What'd you call him earlier?
Yeah, get a name.
I guess he listened.
He said a name.
Can you hear Nick?
I said you look like a big swimming pool. You look like a big swimming pool over there. I called you Big Swim.
Big Swim.
All right. Should I tell the people what you called me the second week that I ever
No,
watched you?
don't run that over my
There's a
head.
track record here.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Back to the Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back into Ticket Weeknights. I am Harrison Arens, going solo all the way up until 9 o'clock. We got about 10 minutes here on this segment. We're going to switch it up here a little bit. We're going to stay on football. We're going to go to the NFC North. And again, you guys can join the show, 402-464-5685, as well as streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Allo Channel 951. Now, the reason I want to go to the NFC North is because I'm a Bears fan. And also because the NFC North, to me, is one of the more interesting divisions in terms of movement, right? Because as it sits right now, you look at the NFC North and you don't really feel super confident about anyone other than the Vikings and having a playoff season. The Lions under Dan Campbell, you think Dan Campbell is starting to kind of get that culture turned around, but at the same time, you see them getting better on the wins and loss percentage, but you haven't seen that real significant jump yet. The Packers, obviously going through their situation, kind of moving on from the Rodgers era. They got Jordan Love. He was 7 for 10 in his preseason game. Didn't look bad. Just no errors made. He just played a pretty clean game. Nothing to get you super excited, but nothing to really put doubts in your head either. The only thing that if you're a Green Bay Packers fan is I would imagine you're kind of looking around the wide receiver room, wondering who's going to step up. And if Jordan Love is kind of going to be able to work well with that wide receiver room. You know, we saw that with Justin Fields. And then, you know, moving on to the Bears here, who obviously are hoping to be on the way up, right? You didn't go 3-14 last year, which is, if you're being real, you didn't go 3-14 last year. So you could set up this year to lose, right? You went 3-14 last year, probably chose to maybe not put yourself in the best position to win some of those games so you can get that pick, that first round pick. And now you're sitting in a spot where you got DJ Moore, you know, you got Claypool during the season last year. You got Cole Kmet at tight end, who's a nice player in himself. You're kind of looking around that this offense seems like it has enough talent behind it, right? You still got Khalil Herbert behind you. Great running back. You still got Montgomery as well. Another great running back. That's a great 1-2 punch. And now it's the time to start winning games, right? If you're Chicago Bears, this is kind of the moment of truth. You have been dedicating yourself to this rebuild, and now you have enough pieces. There's enough pieces at play where you should be able to have a winning season if you think Justin Fields is that winning quarterback. And if that's the case, then you see the Bears shooting up a lot in the NFC North division, right? If you think that this is going to be the year where the Bears rebuild really starts to come to fruition, then you're looking at the Bears to be sitting possibly second in the NFC North. You know, I'd imagine most people are going to put Vikings at 1. Just due to last year, the consistency, and say what you will about Kirk Cousins, but I don't think last year was a fluke year. I think Kirk Cousins can, you know, even if it's not as good, I don't think it's crazy to think he can come close to that production again. You're still sitting with Justin Jefferson, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. You put him up there with Kupp, Adams, any of those guys, really. What he's doing at his age right now, he's only getting better, right? So that also kind of puts into question, like, what's this guy going to look like year 2? And Kirk Cousins, that's a hell of a relief to throw to. Justin Jefferson had probably a highlight catch that stole ESPN's top 10 every other week. Like, that's how good he was for the Vikings. So, I think if you're being honest, like, you're probably chalking in the Vikings do that again, right? Now, they did lose Dalvin Cook, so that is one thing you probably want to take into consideration. You're looking at, how much they rely on Dalvin Cook in the run game, and can they find a way to make the run game serviceable enough? Because, if you're being honest, you're probably not going to get a replacement that's as good as Dalvin Cook, right? That's pretty wishful thinking. So you're going to have to find a way to, even with not as much run production, can you trust Kirk Cousins to continue making those throws and have that same level of consistency he did last year, or at least close enough to where you're sitting at top of the NFC North? And again, I do think they kind of get that buy-in. Now, the Bears, I do say they're in a rebuild, but they still got to go against the Lions, right? Lions with Dan Campbell, kind of the same story. They have really, really preached about changing the culture over there into a winning one. And I think you're kind of starting to see that. The team has been getting better under Dan Campbell. What their ceiling is yet to be seen. But, I that's kind of the way I see it, right? I see the Vikings, probably sitting pretty strong as the leader for the NFC North based off of last season. And then I honestly see the Bears and Lions kind of fighting for that too. The Bears got a lot to prove. Now, because if you're the Lions, you weren't that far away, right? You can definitely grab that number 2 spot overall in the NFC North. And if you really put it together, possibly challenge the Vikings to that number 1 spot. But if the Bears, if you're confident that you got DJ Moore, 1,000-yard receiver every year, even the years when he was over on the Carolina Panthers, and he's got Sam Darnold, he's got Newton, he's got all these crazy characters throwing in passes. And he's still putting up 1,000 yards with inconsistent quarterbacks. He even had Baker Mayfield for a little bit there. So again, with DJ Moore, the reason why you feel so good about that is you can kind of see what happens when you pair a quarterback who you think is starting to make the turn and you give him a elite wide receiver, right? You look at Tua. That's a perfect example. All right, Tua, and you haven't necessarily been consistent, but we're going to give you some real weapons here and see what you can do. And that offense was electric. And once Tua had some weapons around him, all of a sudden, the entire game wasn't predicated on his performance. That is so much of the problem with a lot of these rookie quarterbacks, is especially when they got on rosters that they show up there. Trevor Lawrence, for example, his first year, head coach, not great, obviously, with Urban Meyer. The roster around you, indicative of the record last year, not a good roster around you. And you really are looked at as the entire reason you can win or lose a game, because the level you have to play at to win games in those situations, like Trevor Lawrence that first year with the Jaguars, that's an immense amount of pressure. And that pressure can crack. If you got a season where every single time you're running for your life because the offensive line isn't quite there developed, not only are you trying to learn NFL reads at way higher pace just due to the pace of the game, but you're sitting behind an offensive line that isn't really blocking that great for you. We saw that with Joe Burrow early with the Cincinnati Bengals. We saw that with Justin Fields running for their life, and that really hurts that development. When you're scrambling constantly and you're just trying to make the next play and you're not really working on your progressions because you're scrambling for your life, trying to get 5 yards for a first down, just to keep the chains moving. That's the kind of stuff that can really derail quarterbacks. So that's why you got Justin Fields. He's going to have year 2 now under the same offensive coordinator. I think that's huge. And really see if this thing can start to take off. I'm optimistic about the Bears. The way I see it, I do think the Vikings finish number 1 in the NFC North, but I slide the Bears in at 2 and Lions at 3, Packers at 4th. And I think that's just kind of the way it's going to be this year. I think if you're a Bears fan, you might actually have that opportunity to be ahead of the Green Bay Packers as they go through their rebuild. With that being said, though, that's going to do it for me. Wrap up Ticket Weeknights as a whole. We'll still have replays playing on all the streams. We'll have that going 24/7. So again, Watch all the streams. You can go to Twitch or Allo channel 951. We'll have those streams up for you going all night long. Appreciate you guys listening. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night.